All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, I want to thank our ATSU committee and constituencies from all across the country and maybe even around the world for joining on us today on yet another edition of ATSU's Championing the Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is an annual event that we hold in collaboration with other organizations, namely a Student National Medical Association, Hispanic Student Association, and our communications and marketing team, and our information technology team, who I am thankful for their support and service in bringing this to you. You are going to be pleased and well informed by our speaker, who lives the message, the theme of the session, mitigating social bias in the wake of global social unrest. This session is an hour and a half. Following the presenters' comments, there will be time for question and answer. Please note that all questions should be directed to the chat, which will go to our host, Miss Stephanie McGrew. Thank you, Stephanie and Clarissa, for your tireless work in putting these events together. And please, if you do have the ability to unmute yourself, which that should not be the case, please refrain from unmuting, keeping your self muted. If, unfortunately, we have some unintended intervention with regard to uninvited guests who are making this a difficult situation, which we've seen all over the country, our IT team will likely close down the session and reopen shortly in another format, sending in information out to everyone. We'll keep our fingers crossed and pray that the message of the day and the theme relative to the ambiance of Dr. Martin Luther King doesn't necessitate that type of measure. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our speaker. We look forward to an awesome experience today.
Yes, again, thank you all for attending today's Martin Luther King celebration. We all hope that you were able to enjoy yesterday, as well as make it a day that you could give back to your community. I know that typically everyone is challenged to start to do some kind of service, to whether it's a nonprofit organization or find someone local in your community that you can support and assist on that National Day of Service. So definitely try to do that. I know here in the Kirksville community, we kicked off a citywide MLK celebration, and definitely we do have a Facebook page for that, so you can find local things that we are doing in our communities here in Kirksville, as well as and thank you to ATSU and the Diversity and Inclusion Office for being a sponsor and assisting with those efforts. So today I would like to introduce Lisa. I will read her bio before she gets started with her presentation. So she is a president and CEO of Urias Communications. Lisa founded her advertising public relations agency, Urias Communication, in 2006 to provide strategic advertising and public relations services to various Fortune 1000 clients and government agencies throughout the United States. The agency was founded on the ability to connect corporation, governments, and large nonprofits to the fast-growing multicultural markets of the United States Southwest. Today, Urias Communication is considered one of the most respected agencies in the region. Prior to this, Lisa spent 12 years in international marketing with the Undersecretary of the Energy of Mexico, Alberto Escofe of Alisco Consultores, providing marketing consulting for energy companies within Mexico, and with SRP in Phoenix as the Director of International Marketing to market SRP's technology to more than 70 countries annually. Lisa received a BA from ASU and completed the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Institute program. She has received numerous awards, including Arizona Business Magazine's Most Influential Woman and Arizona's most influential minority business leaders, Arizona Republic's 13 to Watch in 2013, and Phoenix Business Journal's Most Admired CEOs. Lisa serves on the boards of National Bank of Arizona, Greater Phoenix Leadership, the ASU Morrison Institute, Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Arizona Community Foundation, and is an appointed member to the Arizona Supreme Court Judicial Council. We would like to introduce to you Lisa, and you can get started.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you to all of you who are here today. I really appreciate you spending time together. I want to thank President Phelps for the honor of presenting to all of you at ATSU, the staff, student body, your graduates, as we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to thank Clinton Normore, Stephanie McGraw again, and Clarissa Rodriguez for helping to organize today's event. And thanks, Dean, for helping us with the technical side of this Zoom presentation. I'd also like to thank all of you on the line today and many of your colleagues who work in the healthcare fields as essential workers. The ravaging effects of COVID-19 have made so many things clear, but none so much so as the need to value and support those of you risking your lives on the front lines of the most important thing on our planet, the health and well-being of our people. So, wow. Who would have thought I'd be coming to you on the heels of one of the most turbulent and dysfunctional periods in American history? That I'd be asked to speak to a group of professionals, students, and American citizens who are here to honor one of the greatest men of American and global histories when we have experienced such a dark chapter in our own. There is no question that 2020 was one of the most challenging years of our lifetimes. COVID-19 was just the tip of the iceberg. The coronavirus saw many of us losing loved ones. We found ourselves or others we care about suffering through a terrible health crisis and unable to connect in person with family members or friends or work colleagues. I know for me, it's been incredibly tough to navigate working largely from home and not being able to see our own parents or my daughters, at least not in the way we typically do. Our recent holiday celebrations were small, and I cried twice over the Christmas season because it was so different from what we're accustomed to. Later in 2020, we saw growing racial unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement come to full fruition with the deaths of our Black brothers and sisters at the hands of police. We remember Breonna Taylor in Louisville, George Floyd in Minneapolis, Ahmaud Arbery in Glenn County, Tony McDade in Tallahassee, and Deion Johnson right here where I live in Phoenix. I spent time at protests, in particular with the Black Mothers Forum here in Eastlake Park, grieving with mothers of Black children in their unimaginable suffering. As a Latina, I knew from experience that our brothers and sisters are treated differently from others in the barrios. I published a column in the Arizona Republic in support of the movement and helped write supportive statements for many corporate clients, but reminded them without a serious commitment to making meaningful change in their own organizations, they should keep their pen silent. And just this month, on January 6th, we witnessed the unimaginable. Our nation's capital stormed by a mob protesting a free and fair election, killing 5 and injuring so many, including 50 members of the Capitol Police. And let's be honest, it could have been so much worse. Even though 61 of the 62 lawsuits objecting to the election results lost in courts across the nation, our own elected leaders, including the president, continue to suggest that the voting will of the people was not valid and that millions of votes should be overturned by a small number of elected government officials. And we cannot overlook that many of those votes elected leaders were suggesting were invalid were in counties with largely Black and brown voters. So where do we go from here? What would Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the world's greatest spiritual and political leaders of our lifetimes, say during this critical moment in time? How might he guide us? In this moment, we take time to both honor his legacy and remind ourselves of his enduring teachings. Clearly, our nation needs to restore the civil dialogue and honest debate that are the bedrock of any democracy. And clearly, this is a critical time in American history where we need to find a better direction and where most of us would agree we need healing as a nation. Fortunately, Dr. King left us with words and writings that we can lean on today. His message is more important than ever. So let's explore his wisdom and ask ourselves how to reset and reestablish our values as one people, as one nation. Dr. King stated that a lie cannot live. For this republic to survive and thrive as a democracy, we need a common set of values, but we cannot establish a common set of values without a common set of facts. Yet in America today, many millions denied the result of 62 election lawsuits presided on by more than 90 learned judges, most who don't know each other and all arriving at the same conclusion. Millions in America chose to deny facts around our election results in favor of Twitter feeds and YouTube posts, no matter how irresponsible, baseless, dangerous, or damaging. For all the value the internet has provided, we cannot use it to find baseless claims to confirm our own preconceived biases and unexamined prejudices, or to find justification for our anger or our home for our own personal feelings of loss. Dr. King knew that as a nation, to hold our democracy together, our citizenry must be educated, intelligently informed, willing to listen, to inquire, to investigate, and triangulate our sources of information, and above all, learn the facts. Why is this so important? Because as Dr. King reminded us, no man is an island. We may all come on different ships, yet we're all in the same boat now. And we need to remember that there's no such thing as a hole in your end of the boat. There's nothing more dangerous to a democratic republic than to undermine confidence in our democratic institutions, in the system of voting itself, particularly when that distrust is sown by our own government leaders. It's what we see in North Korea, throughout Latin America and countries like Venezuela, in Uganda and other nations, where governments, not the people, manipulate the direction of a nation. That is autocracy at its core, where governments control everything. If you've ever been to countries where government coups have occurred, as I have, you see the inherent danger in that practice and the miserable outcome that it really leaves. People who thought they were disenfranchised before the coup and who are often used by their elected leaders to overthrow democratic processes find themselves even more disenfranchised and powerless after the coup. It's time for Americans to listen to the chorus of various and diverse voices in our nation, to find our true north, not what's mouthed by one or a few leaders. There's far too much at stake for us all. And what we see now more clearly than ever is that this democracy is fragile. We must remember that anyone with a hammer can tear down a building, but it takes a skilled carpenter to build one. The fabric of democracy and faith in our norms and institutions can be torn down in short order, but it takes generations to build the trust required for democracy to flourish. Our failure to align our values with objective facts and common truths risks putting a hole in a boat for us all. Today, we're reminded that our disregard for truth and adherence to science made the United States one of the highest nations for infections and deaths during the coronavirus pandemic. Think about that. our nation, the one whose people wrote the playbook on how to manage through global pandemics, ended up among the largest number of cases and deaths per capita worldwide. While countries like New Zealand, Thailand, Japan enacted our playbook and emerged largely unscathed. Because we largely dismiss the recommendations of our scientists and health professionals related to the pandemic. So today, we're projected to hit 400,000 deaths in America and counting. America has been the light of scientific advancements around the world. People flock to our universities and science institutions to learn and collaborate with people like you, the greatest scientific minds in the world. But what we saw during this pandemic in America was a response largely driven by a stubbornness around individual rights over a collective willingness to do what's right for one another. Dr. King, a pastor and a man of deep faith, understood the critical need to adhere to science and wisely stated that science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals. He implored us to adhere to science while retaining our faiths at the same time. But without an adherence to science, we're doomed because faith, no matter how sincere, doesn't suffice when you're in the hospital on a ventilator. And the effects of the coronavirus are nothing compared to the imminent threat of climate change in the next 20 to 40 years if we don't find a way to acknowledge and properly address it by relying on good science to shape our policies. And if we do not, it will affect everything from global food supplies to worldwide migration patterns and increased social unrest. We must find our way back to valuing truth above fiction and verifiable facts over baseless opinions. It's our responsibility to know and understand what is objectively true and to know the difference between truth and faith or opinion. Dr. King also understood our interconnectivity and our need to support one another as a nation. He admonished us to hold a sense of the collective good, the common green, instead of an exclusive, self-centered interest. Yet today in America, self-interest threatens to drill that hole in our boat and sink us all. Other than Native Americans who were here from this nation's inception, America is a nation of immigrants, whether we came here willingly or by brutal force. In more recent American history, our promise is that this land is a land of great opportunity. Our nation supports a foundational public education system for all and an opportunity for all men and women to reach their God-given potential. But that promise fundamentally lies in a democratic republic whose values are centered on the good of the whole and not just the success of the individual. Yet America is moving further and further away from this promise. Dr. King stated, "We are prone to judge success by the index of our salaries or the size of our automobiles rather than by the quality of our service and relationship to mankind." Today, Americans have gone too far into an almost singular focus on individual material wealth. We have billionaires and soon possibly trillionaires who are largely celebrated simply because of their wealth. Yet we also know that a singular focus on wealth accumulation is often the result of values that are skewed and centered on a win-lose mentality. We no longer have a conversation about big government versus small government. Clearly, both parties are far beyond suggesting they spend less or create smaller deficits than the other. It's more a question of what we value and how we as a nation choose to spend our public dollars. Today, the US Federal Reserve indicates that from 1989 to 2020, the US net worth became increasingly concentrated at the top 1% and top 10% wealthiest Americans. Today, the wealthiest 1% of Americans possess 40% of the nation's wealth, and the bottom 80% own just 7%. Think about that. 1% of Americans possess 40% of our nation's wealth. What benefit does this bring to our nation? People at the top are buying their fourth and fifth homes, while many others at the bottom struggle to find an affordable home to live in or wonder how they're going to pay next month's rent. That center will not hold. Dr. King understood this well as he encouraged us toward what he called the promised land. He wisely stated, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality." He reminded us that when Americans focus exclusively on our own personal gain and take no one else into account, we risk losing our own individual wealth. We must reestablish the value of understanding our connection to one another. The failure to understand our interconnectivity has a destabilizing effect on society and diminishes the experience for us all. Benjamin Franklin stated, "Watch the little things. A small leak will sink a great ship." We're not a collection of individual islands. At America's core, we need communities bonded by shared values and shared institutions. We must hold that prosperity and opportunity be available to all. This bonds our nation and our people with common goals and inspiration to live by. Together we work to care for and repair our boat instead of neglecting it. Dr. King stated, "An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity." Our gaze must be realigned to ensure the betterment of all people in our nation. While every person is self-interested and wants opportunity to build a successful life for herself, we must understand Dr. King's message that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? That question was drilled into me from the time I was a little girl. I was never asked, "What are you going to do?" I was asked, "What contribution are you going to make?" And while I'm proud of the great deal of success I've had in my personal life, my life's mission is to bridge the divide between powerful businesses and governments and our multicultural communities, to help them come together and understand and support one another for mutual benefit and respect. Today, social media has skewed our focus toward individual fame and fortune. Our measure of success has become determined by our number of followers and likes, not of our goodness or our virtue, not by the content of our character, but of our ability to self-promote. Yet Dr. King reminds us that it is character and goodness and love that makes a person great. Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. There's no question that this nation has made significant progress over the years in our race relations. We recently saw the state of Georgia elect a Black US Senator for the first time in that state's history. Senator-elect Warnock is a pastor at the church where Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor. When elected, Senator Warnock stated, "My 84-year-old mother grew up picking someone else's cotton, but today she picked her son as a United States Senator." Tomorrow, we'll see the inauguration of a new president and the first woman vice president, a woman of Black and East Indian descent, no less. These are great moments in American history to be celebrated and clearly demonstrate the racial progress that we've made. But the continued social unrest and racial division that has been on public display make us keenly aware that there's so much to be done if we're to keep our democratic republic, our boat, intact. It's during these challenging times that Dr. King reminds us that the character of a person, and indeed the character of a nation, is revealed not when things are easy, but when things are hard. Remember, he was under tremendous pressure himself. He was stalked by the US government, and he and his family were under imminent threats of violence. Yet he stated, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. So now it's time for each of us to focus on doing what's right for our nation, regardless of our race, our political affiliation, or religion. Now is the time for Americans to heed these words of Dr. King, to never, never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person or animal is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way. We cannot allow this nation to be ruled by bad behavior, evil intentions, and violence without being expressly complicit in allowing this nation to falter. Dr. King said, "He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetuate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." Because working to form a more perfect union when we as human beings are far from perfect is not easy. But that struggle is critical for us all to accept if we're going to make our communities, this nation, and our world a better place for ourselves and for generations to come. And I know each one of you will accept that challenge. Dr. King stated, human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. So in closing, let us remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. Whatever your life's work is, do it well. A woman should do her job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do it no better. And finally, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or perish together as fools. Let's find that way together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that amazing message. And it was very powerful. And I hope everyone was able to take away something positive from what she shared with us. So now we would like to take some questions. And like Clinton stated earlier, you can send them to the chat. And as we get them, I will start to read them to Lisa so she can start to answer them. So we do have a question for you already.
Okay, great.
Miss Urias, what role do you believe graduate health education programs like ours play in managing social biases?
Well, interestingly enough, as I was researching Dr. Martin Luther King's life and legacy and reading some great books that, I have read in the past but reread, I found his commitment to science so fascinating. Dr. Martin Luther King really wanted people to have a broad and strong understanding of science. And so the role that you're playing at this university, helping people understand health and the health disparities that occur within communities, all of the things related to the scientific advancements that are being made here in the United States and globally are critical. I was listening to one reporter talking with a healthcare expert about why America suffered so much during this coronavirus pandemic, for example. And they were suggesting that America has suffered a lot of health disparities, and a lot of Americans have underlying conditions that you don't find in many other developed countries. So, things that you can help people understand. I had Dr. Richard Carmona, who was the former Surgeon General, one time say to me, almost all disease is preventable. And I said, what? And he said, about 95% of disease is preventable. And I said, what do you mean by that, doctor? I've never heard that. And however, I'm an adult woman, I've never heard that. But he went through, obesity, diabetes, abuse of alcohol and drugs, stress, all the different things that happen within our culture that you as health professionals can spread that message and help people understand that all these things are preventable. It isn't inevitable that because your grandmother was diabetic, you're going to be diabetic, right? I mean, some of these things may give you propensities in that direction, but you as health professionals can make such a difference in ensuring that we have our people at every level of this culture have clear understanding. Even my own daughter, who's 20 years old, said to me, why do I need to go get a health checkup, Mom? They're not going to be able to detect if I have cancer or something. And I said, yes, they would. Absolutely, they would. And these are the things that even well-educated kids like my own don't fully understand. So it's up to you as health professionals to help everyone at every level understand the critical nature of care, the care and well-being of their health.
Perfect. And your next question is, Miss Urias, how can each person create change?
I loved, again, rereading Dr. Martin Luther King, because he reminds us that it isn't necessarily in these big ways. Leadership comes in so many forms. You create change in the smallest ways every day, moment by moment. From the time we get up in the morning, deciding how it is that we want to live this day, interacting with our own families, our spouses, our partners, our children, how we treat one another when we come into the office, when we see our superiors and people working for us. How is it that we're interacting with each other? Sometimes I'll go through my emails in my sent file and I'll read especially how it is that I'm speaking to people on my staff, because I want to know, do I sound like I'm just issuing commands at people, or do I sound like someone who is a servant leader, someone who is here and available to them whenever they need it, and who appreciates everything that they do every day? If we don't understand and appreciate every single role that we all have to play in this country, in this world, we are really creating too many disparate levels and suggesting that just because someone has financial success, that means that they are a successful human being. Being a successful human being really is about being kind to one another, loving one another, showing gratitude to one another every day.
Great answer. Another question is, Miss Urias, what challenges did you incur while ascending to your role as a CEO, and how did you overcome them?
Well, as a woman and as a woman of color, I will tell you it hasn't been easy. I have experienced some privilege in my life. I will not doubt that. You'll see behind me, there's a picture of my grandfather. My grandfather was a first generation American citizen. He was born in 1909 in Flagstaff. His family, my great grandparents, were from Puebla and Veracruz. They were pre-Pancho Villa revolutionaries who were fighting against the oppressive Mexican government and ended up coming to Arizona when it was a territory. And he became the first Latino city councilman in the city of Phoenix. And that was in large part due to his friendship and relationship with people who were established, powerful people in this community. George Lors was the first builder of the high-rise buildings in Phoenix, and he worked for the Lors family. Barry Goldwater was a politician and the Phoenix mayor at the time, and asked Adam to run for the city council. And Adam never thought he should do anything like that, but he did, and he won. And he spent his life trying to bring all the things that were important into the communities that he loved, into the barrio communities. He saw the disparate divisions. So my life was in many ways privileged because I had a very well-educated family. I had parents who were both graduates of university. My father was a teacher, my mother was a nurse, and I was able to go to college. I was able to do a lot of things that many of my neighbor kids weren't able to do. But I will tell you that even with that, as a woman and as a minority woman, there is not an equal playing field. I have been told so many times that we're too small. Well, you're just not capable. There's other big agencies out there that are better than you are. And, you know, I've seen risk after risk after risk taken on other agencies that were far smaller than our own. But it's really more important to me that we continue to help people understand that no matter who we are, no matter where we come from, this is about opportunity. There's no one who has any measure of success who didn't have risk taken on them. And so it's really imperative for all of us to take risks on the people that are coming up below you now. Make sure that you give them opportunity, that you train them, that you help them, that you support them, because everybody is capable. Talent is randomly distributed and distributed across every population, and everybody has something to offer. So it's really important for all of us to provide those opportunities to others.
Another great response. Here's another question. Ms. Urias, as a communications expert, what should we consider in our virtual communications, particularly Zoom, to ensure a welcoming and inclusive environment?
Well, you know, Zoom is Zoom is tough. And you know, I really don't know that I have a great answer. I definitely think that it is nice if we can spend time prior to a meeting formally getting started, just like we did today, just spending some time together. Some of what we all love within our in-person gatherings is that we get to see each other and catch up a little bit, learn about how's the family, how are your kids, what's happening with you, you know, what'd you do this weekend, did you go golfing, did you have a nice, you know, watch the game, who's up, who's down, you know, because all of that interconnection matters to us. So I think the only thing I would probably want to add to what we currently do in Zoom is maybe spend some time, 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, and just spend some time asking each other how you're doing and maybe just catching up, because those are the things that I miss the most. We can still get work done. We can all still accomplish everything that we need to accomplish, but without those personal connections, it's really tough. And we need to retain those and maintain those, especially right now.
And here's another one. Miss Urias, can you tell us some of your favorite books that you would recommend reading?
Oh, well, I love reading and I read a lot. I just finished a book that relates to Martin Luther King and everything that he stood for, called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. A Caste, I think, is The Origins of Our Discontent. And that's a nonfiction book. I'm a big literature fiction reader too, so I read um, fiction a lot. I loved All the Light We Cannot See, which is a hefty book, fiction book about World War II, a little girl who's blind and French, and the little boy who ends up in the German um, Nazi youth. It was a beautiful story and very compelling writing. I would encourage all of you to read Dr. King's books. A Testament of Hope, of course, is about his writings and his speeches. Um, and Still I Rise is another wonderful book. I could go on and on because I'm always reading, but I would just encourage you to, read memoirs, read things about great people you admire. Um, Listen to their stories, because there is a theme to every story in the human condition, and it's about people's struggles and the challenges that people go through, the love that they encounter, the obstacles that they overcome, and the human uh, story is the same everywhere you go, and it's important for us to be reminded of that.
Very, very true. Here's another question. Ms. Urias, do you have any suggestions on how our country can have one truth? Like, for instance, the 61 failed lawsuits, but yet there are so many that refuse to hear that or acknowledge the truth. Continue to proclaim a stolen election, thus continuing the division in our country. How do we heal this?
Well, I think the most important thing when it comes to things like that is I really do believe that you, as leaders in your space, are required to read and triangulate and explore. We are all required to do that, to know what's real and what's a belief. Um, that's very important, to hold on to your own center and your own family's center, and to be able to help navigate through these very difficult waters. That's critical. So it is a responsibility of each individual to really explore, read, triangulate. So we can't just look at one source. We need to be able to navigate these waters. As a communications professional, I work with the media every day. We work with the media all the time to help position our clients. And a free and objective media is critical. This is important. I think this is an important thing. They've been under serious attack, and it's really unfortunate, because I will tell you, I get so frustrated sometimes with reporters. There's no question that sometimes there's a tendency you'll find where they want to lean toward what'll be more what we call clickbait. They'll want to lean toward a headline that's more sensational or a story that's more salacious. But the fact of the matter is that they are here to be checks on power. People with enormous power, a president of the United States, a senator, a US congressional member, a governor, a US elected official, they have enormous power over the people that are in their nations and in their states. And it is important for those media to be able to question them, to be able to check them, to be able to push back on what they're doing. And every elected official should be willing to listen and to answer and to manage and to navigate through that. I would say you really need to make sure that your elected leaders are capable, honest people. How easy is that? I don't know. It's not that easy because sometimes I find myself frustrated with people that I've supported over the years. But it's really important for us to check them and to make sure that they're being honest and they're doing the right things by all of us. So making sure that your elected leaders are people who are honest and truthful and are going to do the right thing is critical. So if you find they're not doing it, find someone else and push for someone better. But being civically engaged is really important, and making sure that people who have that kind of power over us are being honest is really, really important.
Very, very good advice. Next question is, how do we build more interest in communities of color to pursue a graduate health education to become a health professional?
It's so important. There's no question. And, I think it really starts very young. People like you, all of you, going out and speaking to our young kids, telling them about what you do. You are heroes. Healthcare are people who are heroes. I've been sending my little sister, who's a nurse at St. Joe's, and, in the middle of the whole COVID unit, little gifts every month, just something, letting her know I'm thinking of her, because she is my hero right now. Despite everything that she's going through, she'll check in and say, how's everyone doing? Is everyone okay? Make sure you keep your oximeter close by and your thermometer, here giving us things about what to do. You are our healthcare heroes, whether you're in a profession that's dental, eye care, whatever it is. You are there to help us understand and better take control of our own personal health and well-being, and thereby the health and well-being of our communities and of our country. And so I would encourage all of you to speak to kids. Go out and talk to them at a young age, whether they're in elementary school, junior high, high school. Make sure to get a speakers bureau and get on that circuit, because they need to hear from you. They need to know about what you're doing and how important it is.
Another great answer. Here's another question. Please speak more on the value of relationships and building trust in community.
Well, I don't think there's anything more important than trust. When you break trust, you lose everything. I have a little talk that I do about this, actually. I talk about when you grow up in the barrio and you're living in such small quarters, there is nothing more important than trust. Whether you're helping a family with a microloan or dealing with a discrete issue around a child's challenges, if you break the bonds of trust, you lose everything. Trust really matters. And when it comes to business, it is equally important. My favorite training in business is Stephen Covey's Operating at the Speed of Trust. And it's a training program that helps business leaders understand that they cannot have a successful business without trusting relationships within their own organizations. And if they're, for example, building a strategic plan together, and they have a team of people who have established a goal and a set of strategies to move forward, but then they find that other people who have, C-suite executives have gotten together and have decided to go in a completely different direction, you're breaking the bonds of trust and you've lost everything. You have to have trust in communities, in organization. You have to have integrity. You have to speak the truth. I always say to our clients, and even with my own staff, tell the truth faster. We have a lot of clients who call us in crisis communications, and they've gotten themselves into messes sometimes. And I always tell them, tell the truth faster. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. You've got to go out there and confront it immediately and apologize. Because if you try and cover it up, if you try and gloss it over, you're going to end up far worse off than you are if you just own up to what you've done. So I think it's really important for us. We all make mistakes. We all have problems. We all do things that aren't always in the best intention. But it's so important for us to have integrity, to let our word be what it is, to speak the truth and to honor what you say. Make a commitment to following through on what you say you're going to do. And that will make all the difference in building our communities of trust.
Another great response. Here's another question. How can the corporate community and the healthcare community work better together to improve access and opportunities?
Well, I mean, I assume you mean access to health care. Well, I mean, you know, I don't know about. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine, for example, who is a corporate executive, and he was saying, "I don't take my corporate health insurance because it's not very good." And I said, "Well, you're one of the largest corporations in the state. How can it not be great health insurance?" And he said, "No, I use my wife's because she works for government and it's better health insurance than my private health insurance." And I find that really unfortunate. I mean, I think that again, there's nothing more important than the health of our communities and the health of our people. And so I think the most important thing is to make sure that you are communicating out to corporate partners the critical need to be proactive about health instead of reactive. So helping send the message that the more people take a proactive um, approach to everything from their eye care to their dental care to their weight loss to their daily exercise to their diets to their blood levels, checking their blood levels. That is so important for corporations to understand that they need to communicate that out to their people. So that's a role that all of you need to play within your own respective fields, helping people understand that they need to prevent problems from happening. I mean, so many things we've learned about dental health over the last 10 years. Who knew that, dental health can, bad dental hygiene can contribute to so many other diseases. And how many people really know that to this day? But those are the kinds of things that need to be addressed all over corporate America. And it's essential if we're going to keep healthcare costs down and if we're going to keep our nation healthy.
I agree. The next question is, our country values capitalism. Do you believe there are alternative approaches to equity, particularly in healthcare?
Capitalism is a fundamental part of this country, and it's never going to change. The the idea that we're going to move to socialism is it's not going to happen. We have far too much of a foundational root in capitalism. However, I will remind you that part of my studies in university were around political philosophy. And there was Alexander de Tocqueville, a French philosopher, who came to America and did significant studies around American democracy and capitalism. And he said something that political leaders, enlightened political leaders, will repeat over and over again. And that is that capitalism without compassion is doomed. And I think that's the message of Dr. Martin Luther King. The problem you can find in capitalist systems is that they can be skewed largely in favor of the wealthy and powerful. And we have seen that happen over the course of time, which is why 1% of the population controls 40% of the wealth in America. That isn't just happening because they're smarter than any of us or any of you or anybody in the room. That's happening because we are creating policies that give an opportunity in one direction, the financial benefit going in one direction versus another direction. So as far as I'm concerned, if I'm going to give money to my government, which I willingly do, we pay a lot in taxes in our family, I'm okay with doing that as long as it doesn't go to a corporate tax break, or as long as it doesn't go to something that allows for someone to take another tax write-off on a fourth home, or allows corporations to do offshore business so that they don't pay taxes here in America. I want my taxes to go to healthcare. I want my taxes to go to a good public education system. I want my taxes to go to roads and bridges and infrastructure buildings, because that's where we see the benefit of the collective. That's where Dr. Martin Luther King was encouraging us and admonishing us that providing opportunity for everyone to become their very best is what's in the best interest of the country.
Great answer. Another question is, you speak with Fortune 500 CEOs all over the world. In your opinion, what concerns them about our healthcare? What concerns them most about healthcare?
Well, Dr. Linda Hunt, who's the head of St. Joseph's, she is very concerned. They're concerned about lots of things, but she often says to me, Lisa, can you make sure that people understand preventive care? Can you fix that? She makes a joke, can you fix that? Can you go out and talk to, she's talking about people of color, mostly minority communities. Can you go fix that? And I laugh at her and I say, no, I can't. But, I think that interestingly enough, right now, globally, I think America has a lot to think about. We have a lot of soul searching to do. When it comes to many things, we were once number one. We were number one in healthcare many years ago in the 60s. We were number one in affordable housing. We were number one in education, public education systems and access to public education. And those numbers have been sliding downward significantly over the years. And so globally, you'll find that a lot of corporations, multinational corporations, are looking less to the United States for answers and looking elsewhere. And that's a challenge for us that we need to take on. And part of that challenge means paying better attention to the public good in this country, paying better attention to the public health of our citizenry, paying better attention to how we educate and promote our people. So those are the things that most corporate CEOs I know are concerned about. They are very concerned about the disparity in wealth. It's interesting because you'd think they wouldn't be, right? You think a corporate CEO would be like, oh, let me just stuff the money in my pocket. It's not true. The majority of the ones that I talk to are very concerned about the disparities that are occurring in this country, and they want it fixed.
Very, very good. Another question is, you mentioned something along the lines, 1% of the population controls 40% of the country's wealth. ATSU prides itself on serving the underserved. To get an education specific to the values of ATSU doesn't allow students to find positions in primary care and afford the cost of their education. What is your perspective on the irony, especially considering the need for primary care physicians?
You know, Dr. Crow, the president of ASU, has asked me to help with, I mean, I call it, he calls it Latino student attainment. I call it, it's really about kids who are struggling with poverty at every level, whether they're white, black, brown. It's poverty. Poverty is a real deterrent in this country to success. It wasn't always. There was a time when, kids could go to public schools, they could have access to college. I have a funny little story. When my oldest daughter was 5 years old, we were living in the central city, and at the time, the public school systems were crowded. There was a lot of, challenges associated with it. And we started kind of looking around at private schools. And we ended up at one of the elite private schools in North Central Phoenix. And my husband, who's a lawyer, we walked around and looked at all the beautiful things that they had, the equestrian center and the computers on every desk, and all the things that are afforded kids within these private privileged institutions. And we sat down with the headmaster, and my husband said, okay, so how much? And she said, $12,000 a year. And this was 22 years ago. $12,000 a year. And my husband said, he looked at me and said, I'd be paying more for my kids' kindergarten than I paid for my entire college education. And David is a white man who came out of poverty. He came out of poverty, was a super smart kid, ended up going to University of Santa Barbara, ended up going to University of Utah Law School, graduated second in his class, and has been an incredible success story for a kid who came out of poverty, had nothing, but he never had to pay the kinds of prices that so many of our kids today are expected to pay for university and college and private and public institutions. We have failed again to invest in our students as our future. And it is an investment. It is not a cost. It is an investment when we put our public dollars toward our students. So we need more public investment in universities and schools like yours. We need more scholarship opportunities for our students who are struggling so that they can get there. There's no reason whatsoever that we shouldn't be getting there. We shouldn't be allowing them to advance. We are wasting our talent if we don't do that. We are not mining our gold. We need to be able to make sure that all students have access to places like yours.
Thank you so much for those answers. And I am going to let Clinton speak as we start to come to a close.
Ms. Urias, thank you so much for bringing us your wisdom, your words on behalf of President Phelps, our cabinet, our ATSU family. We so much appreciate you being here with us today to celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, but also to build on the trust and community that we have in our ATSU family. We appreciate that so much. Again, to our ATSU family, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for all that you do for ATSU and the world. We appreciate you so much. Please pay attention to your emails. Another President's Cultural Proficiency Open Series Forum will take place February 25th, and that forum will be on holding difficult conversations. I'm sure you will appreciate that speaker as well. And without further ado, I turn it back over to my colleague, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you all again for participating with us in this event. If you will look in your chat section, please take a quick moment to fill out the Qualtrics survey. I did put the link there, and that is just to allow us the opportunity to ensure that we are providing the type of resources that you're looking for in regards to cultural proficiency and unconscious bias and all those other kind of resources that you're looking for as a faculty, staff, student, or any other associate of ATSU or in our community. Our goal is to be able to provide those resources in any way that we possibly can. And the only way for us to do that is if you give us that feedback. So again, just take a few minutes. The link is there, just click on it, and you can actually do it on your phone. So that's a great option as well. Again, Mrs. Urias, do you have any closing words or any closing comments you would like to leave our university with?
Yes, all I want to say is thank you. It was such an honor for me to be able to do this presentation. I mean, Dr. Martin Luther King is obviously, as I said, one of the greatest spiritual and political leaders of our lifetimes and in the world. And to be able to speak to his message was such an honor, and to be able to meet all of you and to learn more about ATSU and all the wonderful things that you're doing. We need you. We need you to do all the great work that you're doing. And thanks again for the opportunity to meet all of you.
Yes, and again, thank you all. Just a few last things before we release you all. Please do not hesitate to follow the Diversity and Inclusion Office on social media. All of our handles are ATSU Diversity. Another thing is the call to action for all of you to dedicate some time and or resources, no matter what it is that you're able to do so by the end of the month. And that's just in honor of this this flow of giving, something that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was very, very instilled in doing. So whether that's financially donating or donating something out of your house or donating your time, we definitely are challenging you to have that call of action to give back in some kind of way before the end of the month. And again, those in the Kirksville community, please check out the Martin Luther King Kirksville Citywide Facebook group, as we have created a link of all of the activities that are going on right here in the Kirksville community that will allow you to get involved. Some of them are virtual. I think all of them are virtual, but there's also video. There's all kinds of great things just to be a part of the celebration. And all of our campuses, since it's virtual, please, by all means, check that Facebook link out and click on all the links and be involved with all the activities that our office in our university is helping to sponsor this year. And as always, thank you all for your time. One last, please fill out the Qualtrics survey, and we all appreciate all that you all do. Please be safe and be healthy. This is a trying time for everyone, and as much as we want you to focus on, your physical health, also mental health is also very important. So definitely utilize the university resources that are available. And thank you for your time, and stay healthy.